Hello, welcome to The Trouble with Football, the show where football's irritations get the spotlight they deserve. Each episode, I sit down with a fellow fan and podcaster who has a bone to pick with the powers that be about our beautiful game. Big or small, stupid or serious, no topic is off limits. I'm Neil, and today my guest with a gripe is Joe Sayers, who is a Brighton and Hove Albion content creator who has written for the BBC, Sky Sports. He's also producer and host of the Albion Obsessed podcast. Starting in 2021, the Albion Obsessed podcast has followed the rise of Brighton in the Premier League and, of course, on the European stage. And like the club, the podcast has gone from strength to strength. With a range of lifelong and newer fans as co-hosts, the podcast offers a host of varied opinions. So, Joe, welcome to The Trouble with Football. How are you?
Hello, yes, doing well, mate. What a lovely introduction that was. Feeling good, feeling like I want to talk about a few things that are grinding my gears.
Now that is a good idea for a show. I wish we'd thought of that. Oh, hang on. No, here we are. It's okay. Listen, mate, I've got a few questions first, if that's all right, because like you, I'm a fellow Brighton and Hove Albion fan. I can't hide it. I never try to. I love my club, but I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, if that's all right. So, first of all, why Brighton? Why did you choose Brighton?
I think it's the very stock answer. It's just family. It's in the blood. I was a little bit later to the party. I grew up away from Brighton. I grew up not too far away in Hastings. I never really got the opportunity to go to the Withdean. My mum being a single mum, and you know she's working two jobs just to get me and my brother by, and she was paying for guitar lessons because that's what we loved back then. So that opportunity to go to the football was never really there until I was about sort of 14, 15. Luckily, I got my first season ticket in our third year at the Amex, which was the Oscar Garcia season. Yeah, like my first season I really remember being like a fully fledged fan was our last season at the Withdean, watching from afar and, you know, winning League One when no one gave us a chance to. And Nigel Adkins was saying, yeah, well, if they can keep up with us. And I think we won the league then by 7 points, which was lovely to sort of stick that up to him. Yeah, it just sort of grew from there. I think I was lucky with when I started supporting the Albion that we were playing unbelievable football under Gus Poyet. And like many Brighton fans from the past, I think I've had a different experience because all I've ever known really is an upwards trajectory except for that Sami Hyypiä season. So
we don't talk about that though, do we?
No, absolutely not. Who's Sami Hyypiä again? I don't know. But yeah, I've just fallen into it, and I absolutely adore it. And as you can tell by my podcast name, I am obsessed by it.
So I'm glad you mentioned the podcast again, because I was going to ask you a few questions about that. So the obvious question first, really, why did you start a podcast? What made you do that?
Yeah, so it was off the back of the Euros in 2021. Me and my friend Toby, we did a podcast called the Centre Circle podcast over just covering England. We're both big England fans as well. Obviously, that disappointing end was quite hard to take, and we then sort of thought, okay, what do we want to do now? Do we want to do a podcast on the Premier League, or do we want to cover something that we're more passionate about? We landed on just doing a podcast about the Albion, and that's where Albion Obsessed was born. Through personal reasons for Toby, he had to leave only after 2 episodes. And then I was left to sort of think, okay, where do I want to take this? Do I want to carry on? I decided to, and luckily I sort of just fell into the co-hosts that I brought on. I had my friends Curtis and Tom, Aaron and Chloe, who were like really big in starting it. I'm lucky in the fact that a family friend of mine is Peter Ward, so I got him on the podcast, and we sort of grew from there, really. It's just 7 episodes in, we interviewed Wardy, and then I've stayed in contact also with Craig McHale-Smith from my times as an apprentice. I interviewed him back then, and we've just stayed in contact, and he's such a lovely bloke. And then we had him on the 11th episode, so we were quite lucky in how we started with 2 guests like that. And then I've just been obsessed with it. I've just been growing it and trying to pushed this into like something that I can do as work.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. That's
now
the dream, isn't it?
exactly, and I'm at a stage now where I am starting to get paid for a few bits here and there. So, the dream is alive, but we got to keep going.
I was going to actually ask you about that because I mentioned it in your bio at the beginning. One of the things that's quite new currently for this season is the Sky Sports fan analysis piece as well, and that sort of stuff. And I don't know if you can maybe describe what that is a little bit more for people that maybe don't know, because you're part of that, aren't you?
Yeah, so Sky are attempting to change the narrative of how football media is perceived and to allow fans to have their say in terms of how they believe their players have rated, how they think their managers are doing, and they're trying to introduce how they think referees are doing as well, which is going to be very, very fun. It's all headed by Michael McIntyre and Gary Neville, who sort of teamed up to start this project. I was lucky in the fact that I was reached out to by Hungry Bear Media, who is the company behind Fanalysis. Went up for an audition in London in their offices with a bunch of other Albion fans, and was lucky enough to be selected as one of the starting 11s. And we're aiming to sort of build the app up this season, get a few people in to test it and stuff, and then eventually will be rolled out for everybody to be involved in. And it's trying to get away from that toxicity of social media, of X, of TikTok. They're introducing like a disciplinary thing where if you're reported, you'll get a yellow card. If you're reported again, you'll get a second yellow and you're gone. Some things will be a straight red card and you'll be off the app straight away. So I think it's a really positive thing. We are invited onto Sky to talk to them about various matches. And I think the public perception so far is, why are Sky delving into fans talking about it? What do fans know? But actually that's the narrative that they're trying to change.
Yeah.
Fans know everything. We're obsessed by our football clubs. And sometimes the most interesting narratives do come from fans, because all of this analytical, statistical based stuff can be quite frustrating for fans because they're not focusing on the true problem.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited by that, and I think it could go far.
It sounds like a great idea, and I think anything that tries to sort of bring the fans together in a constructive way to have those conversations as well, I think is always a positive step. There's lots of talk about, obviously, the negativity of social media and things. So to be able to have something like that, I think is a really positive step. And like you said, you get the chance to maybe be on Sky Sports from time to time as well. That's a great opportunity for you. So look, congratulations for a start for getting that far. That's great. And good luck to you in the future as well. That's going to be amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. So, yeah.
Listen, you're here for a reason. I'm being told that you especially have something to add to my list of problems about the beautiful game. So I'm going to ask you now, if you can tell me, what do you think is the trouble with football?
I think the trouble with football is the price of a match day. And I think I'm going to add to that as well, the price of football itself, in terms of being a fan and what you feel like you have to buy to be the best fan you can be. So I'll start with probably one thing I'm the most passionate about, and that is football shirts and the rising costs of that. So if you want a player authentic football shirt, these days you're looking at around £110 to £130 for a player authentic version, with every little bit on there that the players will wear, the same feel. I think, judging by what it used to be 10 years ago, it used to be the same thing that was sold on the shelves would be the same thing the players wear, and you would find it for about £60. Every season, just especially with Brighton now, I'm finding that the shirts are going up £5 every season, and we're just going to keep rising. And actually, it's creating much more of a huge problem, because all of the like fake markets and stuff like that, and the unethical markets are now being brought to the top, because they can sell pretty much the same shirt for about 70% less. And I think it's a really dangerous thing, because, as I say, it's really unethical, and where these places come from. And for me, I'm autistic, and one of my main hyper focuses is football shirts. So one, it's a very expensive hyper focus, but also, like, I can't not have the real thing, and I think that that's the same for a lot of people. Is that you want to support your club in a financial way of spending your money and going there, but I don't think they really care about us in terms of keeping that cost down.
We another episode I did of Trouble with Football, I did with Dave Mooney, who runs the Blue Moon podcast for Manchester City, and we did a whole episode on all the different amount of like too many kits and the cost and all those sorts of things and the sales and things. It's such huge business for the clubs, and you're absolutely right that the fans are the ones that have to pay this money every single season to get through it. And, on top of the shirts, the other things that are sort of coming out at the moment there's been a lot of talk recently, obviously, about ticket prices as well, and the cost of actually physically on the day going to the games. What's your sort of thoughts when it comes to the tickets and other things like that?
Yeah, of course. Like when you look at Premier League ticketing for away games, I think they're capped at £30 now. But I don't think the problem ends there. There's an issue with how the TV companies select, and I'd be careful with what I say here because of the TV company that I'm involved with. There's issues with how they select like later kickoffs. For example, you could find that Bournemouth are playing Newcastle on a Wednesday night, and it's near on impossible for the Newcastle fans or the Bournemouth fans to get home. So then you're looking at hotel prices, and of course, when the hotels figure out that there's an event going on, they'll hike their prices up. So it's not just the £30 capped ticket you've got to spend. It's over £100 on train travel, and then you're looking at, if you want to go for a coach, they're hiking their prices up as well. I think it's all just like a really vicious cycle with the cost of living crisis and all of that stuff that not many people can do anything about. I feel like that if people want the football culture to remain in this country, I think there needs to be something done in terms of like a subsidiary by the Premier League or by the greater powers that be to help football fans still follow their country up and down.
I agree. I did. I recently did a bit of a look at some of the costs and try and do a bit of a case study. I thought I'd use Brighton as it was a good example, particularly this season. With Sunderland now being in the Premier League, there's obviously going to be an away trip to Sunderland. So I did some maths and I tried to work out, how much it might actually cost a fan and how much time and things. And I was looking at it, and it's like, for a start, it's a 680-mile round trip for the fans. So that's a minimum of around a 7-hour car journey all the way up, plus back 14 hours in the car. Train journey, 5 or 6 hours, 2 to 4 different changes. There's all those sorts of things. And even the coach, when I looked at the Seagulls Travel, which is like one of the teams, one of the sort of affiliated travel companies for Brighton fans, that's still going to cost you about 80 quid to go. And that you have to probably get on the bus around 4 a.m. So it's a crazy day to go all in one day, but people are doing that because the cost is so high to go. So you're absolutely right. You're looking at a minimum to do a whole 14 to 15-hour journey all the way through, all the costs involved. You're well over £200 by the time you actually get through it all. It's crazy.
Yeah. Not only that is the commitment, financial commitments in terms of taking time off of work, whether your kids want to go with you as well, because then that'll just like triple it. And as well, going back to the football shirt side of things, if you're a family of, let's say, 2 parents who love the club and you've got 4 kids, you've then got to be paying for all of their kits away. They probably want the home and away as well. And if you want to get one for yourself, so you're probably looking at spending like season ticket prices, football shirt cost. Already that is nearing probably about £2,000, maybe even 3.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned ticket prices. It's something I was going to ask you about as well. When you mentioned price of Matchday, I was thinking to myself, obviously we've got season tickets. That's one thing. But actually, if you just look at a ticket to go to a single game, particularly in the Premier League, obviously they vary a huge amount as well. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on sort of the way that tickets are priced nowadays, and particularly for fans, home fans going to the ground. There was a survey done on TalkSport recently around sort of the cost of match day and things, and there was a couple of questions that they answered, and 72% believe that Premier League tickets are not value for money. And then they said also 65% say food and drink prices are unreasonable, which is the other question mark, isn't it? When you actually get to the ground, the other expenses you have to get to. But what's your thoughts when it comes to match day ticket prices and things?
Yeah, so I think we're quite lucky in the way our club do it. In terms of I think they try and make it more cost effective to get a season ticket, and I understand that's not a commitment that many people can do, but there's obviously the ticket exchange and stuff like that, and you get money back for games that you can't go to. But I think the categorization of fixtures is sometimes questionable, because you'll turn around and they'll say, like, I don't know, Manchester United is still a Category A match, and it's like, hold on a minute, Manchester United are a shadow of the club that they once were, and they're not nowhere near the top of the Premier League, and I don't understand why that category still exists. So yeah, it's really hard, because if you don't make that commitment as a season ticket holder, and you want to go and see the clubs like Liverpool and stuff, you're looking at spending about £75, depending on where you sit in the ground. And then obviously we're lucky as a football club that we get free travel in and around Brighton and Hove and surrounding areas. So you don't really have to think of travel that much.
That's quite a unique thing, though, isn't it? I mean, across the Premier League, at that for a lot of fans and other leagues as well, obviously that's not included. Clubs can't always afford that. And I think that you're quite right about the costs of prices. I think when you look at Brighton in particular, you've got prices from something like 34 to 78 quid. That's how much the dynamic pricing will change depending on the category of the game. I've looked across other teams as well, and you've got, Liverpool are around 39 quid to 61, a lot less of a dynamic pricing. But then if you go down the leagues a little bit, so Wrexham, obviously a big club in some respects now with the way that they're invested in and things, but their costs for tickets are still 26 to 37 quid. And Bradford, again, I went a bit further down, 24 to 28. So there's these costs that aren't necessarily about the team's level. They're more about the geography of the team, I think, and where they are in the standard of living across the UK.
That's very true, yeah. Look at Fulham for an example. They're not exactly a fantastic Premier League club, and I don't want to do down any clubs or throw any shade at any clubs. What have they achieved in they haven't got any European football to gloat about. They haven't got anything to sort of suggest that they should be charging sometimes £100 for a game. And you're right, it's because they're in West London and in one of the richest parts of the country, and their fans are probably more well off than what we are.
No, absolutely, and I think that's part of it. I think dynamic pricing has been sort of around now for a while when it comes to music concerts and things like that, and football is starting to see that now as well, and I think that's a bit of a struggle. If you look back a bit, when sort of ticket prices were changed quite recently over the last sort of 5 to 10 years with the change of the TV contracts and things like that, you see a hike in prices because wages go up, stadium redevelopments. There's lots of things that the Premier League teams in particular will argue are the reasons for why they go up. I just wondered what you think could be done about the cost of a match day. Are there other things that you would like to see or changes made in that sense?
As I said, I think there needs to be an intervention somewhere by the powers that be, in terms of subsidising, even if it was like putting a cap on how much a football shirt costs. I think the caps are there to be utilised, and we've seen that with away tickets, and I don't understand why that can't happen. And I think in 5 years' time we could see football shirts costing nearly £200. If you look at the American market in terms of NFL shirts and MLB shirts, or basketball shirts, they're approaching about $170. So we're going the same way very, very, very quickly, and it's really terrifying, to be honest, because where does that stop? Does that stop with home tickets? We could find that Liverpool, because they win the league, or Arsenal because they win the league, will start charging £200 a ticket because they're doing so well. So it is a terrifying thing to think that they're just going to let it run away because it's bringing so much money in, and not think about the people that make football what it is, and then it becomes a massive tourist trap rather than the culture that I spoke about and keeping that alive.
That's a really good point, I think. When we look at games now, it's obviously big business, we know that. So I think you can clearly see tourists replacing what you call local fans. Let's call them that, as it were. So do you really think the next generation of fans are at risk in that sense?
I think they're at risk more so because of the cost of it rather than the tourist fans coming in. I think tourist fans play a big part in the football economy, and especially for us, I absolutely adore it when I see a big group of Japanese fans coming over to watch Karen Matoma. It's such a special thing for them to see one of their national heroes play for his club in the flesh. And I was walking through a few months back and I had a Matoma shirt on me, and they were also, where'd you get that? And it was at a time where our home shirts were sold out, and I hated to break it to them, but I was like, I'm so sorry, but our home shirts just don't. I think they went in and bought like a 3XL, the only one that was left, just to get Matoma on the back. So it is important that we keep that, but as I say, like, I fear for the next generation in terms of just how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
And it not being an everyday thing where you can say, yeah, I spend £50 a month to go and watch my club. For me, that's a really reasonable price to pay. £25, it works out, I think, at around £25, £26 for each Premier League games.
One of the things I look enviously at is across the water to Europe. And places like, I think Germany is a really good example when you look at the German leagues and the way that they're done, where tickets are generally around sort of 15 to 25 quid or 30 euros area sort of thing for standing tickets. And a lot of that is because a lot of the clubs are sort of owned as in part by fans and by the supporters, that they have rules and regulations in the German Bundesligas around how the ownerships need to be. And I think that helps give the fans a real solid voice to the clubs as well. And they even have things like subsidised travel, like we do. I appreciate at Brighton, but not everyone does. And so I think I do look enviously at that. But then at the same time, I also appreciate, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the Premier League has just grown exponentially over the last 15, 20 years. It's such big business now that I don't think we're ever going to be going back to that.
No, and you're right. Like, it comes with the cost of wanting to be the best league in the world. But then at the same time, it brings up a completely irrelevant point. If you want to be the best league in the world, you need the best officials in the world to do that. And I don't think we've got that at all.
Maybe that's another trouble with football episode I can bring up.
Yeah, I think so. But, I think we just need clubs like us, like Brighton, to lead the way in terms of allowing us to introduce subsidiaries and introduce, like, we've got the fan advisory board now. I think other clubs are doing that too. Just to, really understand where fans are coming from in such a difficult time away from football, because things are so daunting and so scary in the world at the moment. And that I think we need that level of calm when it comes to that, and something to look forward to every weekend, and we don't want that ripped away from us.
Do you think with the birth now of the football regulator in the UK, that's just coming into play now, and it's just starting to build as a entity, as a regulator, do you think that's going to have a positive effect on things like the cost of going to a match?
Yeah, I think so, because, you look at how much money Manchester City have pumped in or pumped out, and they're trying to recover, and they've got so many charges against them. And then you look at all the PSR issues in terms of profitability, what Chelsea are doing in terms of moving their assets around and including buildings, and Aston Villa and Newcastle and clubs like that. They've put the economy in such a way that now football is trying to recover all of those costs, and therefore the prices are just going up and up and up. So I think that will be a really positive thing in terms of making sure clubs are run efficiently and economically, what we're doing is fantastic. We're recovering our money in ways where it's not really touching the fans. And whilst there are rises in prices that we can grumble about, it's nowhere near as bad as, you know, the likes of Fulham, Aston Villa and clubs like that who are charging fans sometimes over £100 for a ticket. I don't know if you saw Aston Villa's Champions League pricing last year. It was crazy. I think it worked out about £120 a match.
Yeah, and I think that's a direct correlation, isn't it, to their issues that they were having at the time with PSR. And I think that was something that was just so clearly the issue, you know, and they had the opportunity to hike their prices up for a big event that they were going through, because they knew as well they had, you know, 8 games in the Champions League because of the new format. So I think that was ill-timed. I was thinking about that, about what fans will accept and what they won't accept in some respects. And I think, you know, when you look at inflation levels, fans accept that. You know, they expect to see from time to time a change in category pricing. They expect, you know, hospitality prices to hike. So you can do whatever you want with hospitality, because I understand the concept, you know. But I think the issue really comes for a lot of fans, and I hope you agree, when there's like sudden jumps in prices, or there's new sort of dynamic pricing to just general admission and things like that, you know. And I think that's where things are unexpected. That's where it really hits the fans, I think.
Yeah. And that's why I think it really irks me when they're doing all of this gradual price increases of football shirts, and then you look back and think, you know, what used to cost me 65 is now costing me nearly £100 for a player's name on the back, the badges on the sleeves, etc. So I think as fans, we do hold a responsibility in terms of saying no, turning our back when things get bad. I think that then in turn the football regulator will listen to us and start to implement things that hopefully make things easier for us to follow the sport we love.
I think that's a really good point as well about the voice of the fans and what they can do. I think not just the voice. I was looking at some things around ticket prices and some other things that have happened in the past. And there was a situation back in 2016 with Liverpool where they hiked all their prices, so much so that I think there was like 10,000 fans walked out of a game in 2016. And that was because they hiked their prices up to 77 quid for a ticket. So on the 77th minute, like 10,000 fans all walked out, basically just trying to make a point to say, look, this is ridiculous. We can't do that. And Liverpool's a good example as well, because I was trying to work out their ticket prices, because obviously they're a huge club, you know, but they live and they are based in an area that maybe is a lower income area. And so I was trying to work out how much their tickets have changed over the years. The Football Supporters Association did a piece of work around it recently as well. And if you compare the cost of a ticket on the Kop in Anfield from 1990, so before the Premier League as such, to then now, and if you work out all the cost of inflation, that ticket now should cost you £14 if it was relevant, but it actually costs you 40. So that's how much the big business has come into these costs.
Yeah, and I think that's the same with, you know, every walk of life these days in terms of inflation. I always look at the price of a Freddo and think what that should be.
The Freddo graph, it's world renowned. It really is.
100%. So yeah, I think, as I say, it's just the sorry state of the country and the sorry state of the cost of living crisis that we face. And there's so many different areas that are experiencing poverty and want to still follow their club, and it's really a really sad thing. And as I say, we've got to be really careful, because I think if we take that community aspect away, we could see a real drop off in terms of people's mental well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think last thing I would say on this, and I'll probably give you the opportunity to say this similar, I think Brighton and Hove Albion as a club, and I think there's a few clubs around in particular, but Brighton, as I know them personally, they're a really great community club, aren't they? And they're doing as much as they can at the moment. I think that they're trying to find that balance between being big business and pushing for more success, whilst also trying to maintain a sense of community.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's so many of our are fans that get really, really irate with what Paul Barber does and what he says and his terminologies. But I think he's easily one of the best CEOs in world football. He will always have time for anyone that has any problems. He always holds back at fans forums to answer more questions. He'll respond to an email within hours. And I think we are lucky in that sense, and we should lead by example in terms of trying to change football. And I think that's what Tony Bloom's trying to do as well with his recruitment strategies and his data-led approach with how he wants to run this club. We're doing it in the most ethical way we possibly can, and some people might turn to, any multi-millionaire doesn't have ethics and that's how they get their money. But actually, when you look at what we're producing and what we're pumping out to fans, we are a club to lead by example, and I think we've got two of the best people in the world to do that.
Totally agree with you. Joe, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being my guest today. That wraps up this episode of The Trouble with Football. Thanks to you guys for listening, and please don't forget to like and subscribe, leave us a review if you can, just spread the word. And finally, just remember that in football, the annoyances are what keeps us talking. See you next time for more chat about The Trouble with Football.